Simcha, celebration, Simcha, Simcha, celebration of life.
Hello, welcome to Simcha, a celebration of life. I'm Nikki Wallman. An integral part of the Nazis' plans for a new ordering of Europe involved the so-called final solution of the Jewish question. From the occupied territories of Bohemia and Moravia in Czechoslovakia, citizens of Jewish origin were hunted down and from November 1941 gradually deported to the town of Terezin, where the Nazis had prepared a ghetto for them. Here they were to be held until the extermination camps further east were ready to carry out their final liquidation.
Terezin is the only concentration camp that was in the Czech Republic, or in Czechoslovakia as it was. Now, of course, it's a museum, but it was based in an old garrison town which was originally built in the 18th century, and it comprised of a small fortress and then this garrison town, and it housed soldiers and their wives and families, about 7,000 people, until sort of the late 19th century.
There were certain categories of Jewish people who were sent to Terezin. The categories were classified according to age, or the fact that they were well-known artists or writers or academics or celebrities. And thirdly, if they were injured during World War I, they were World War I veterans who were disabled because of the war. And part of the propaganda campaign that the Nazis were waging as a way to explain the deportation of Jews from the German Reich, the Greater German Reich, was to say that they were sending Jewish people to work in the East, in labor camps. They were deporting them to death camps. But they needed to then have a way to explain how it was possible they were sending the aged, the very young, these people who'd made a contribution in the arts, and as well as the veterans, to labor camps when they clearly were not suitable for it. And so they said they were sending them to the special ghetto.
So you had a high concentration of those people coming, and it became, there was it's kind of the myth that this was a really good place to come to, but it was a myth. It was created in order to facilitate that process. In the end, all it was a transit camp, and the decision was to move those people out and to kill them eventually. That was the process. So very few survivors, really, out of those 150,000 that passed through.
But what is interesting about Terezin is that it becomes the place where you have this incredible collection of artists, academics, intellectuals, writers, musicians, and as a result of that, this incredibly rich cultural life develops. And the Nazis allow a certain degree of kind of community that was made harder in other ghettos. So you have a series of lectures and of concerts being staged. Don't get me wrong, this was not a paradise by any means. The conditions were terrible, but people were able to express themselves in ways possibly that it was much harder in some of the other ghettos for them to do.
It was a deception. The whole thing was a deception, and of course the famous, really famous part of the deception is that when the Danish Jews are deported, those very few that aren't rescued by the Danes themselves are deported to Terezin. They were captured, they were sent to Terezin. The Swedish Red Cross and the Danish Red Cross inquire what's happened to these people. And they come in October, and they say they're going to come and see what's going on there, to see if they're being treated properly. And that puts the Germans into a panic, and they decide that they're going to beautify the town to dupe the Red Cross, and they achieve that. Not only do they make it very attractive and the Red Cross is taken in by it, but they also take away over 7,000 people they take away quickly from Terezin, send them off to the death camps, to Auschwitz mostly, and free up some space so that the place doesn't look so overcrowded.
Along with this visit, there's also a film that is made of this so-called model ghetto, which is a propaganda film, and it has scenes of Jewish people apparently enjoying themselves and exercising and walking, but it was very, very carefully staged, and only those inmates who looked vaguely healthy were filmed. And it was at the same time that the Red Cross delegation was paying their visits. So that movie exists, but it's a propaganda film and it doesn't show. And people who survive remember it being staged, and children who survived, and there were very, very few children who eventually survived, remember the fact that for the first time they had food, like a sandwich. It was just unheard of. But it was a very successful propaganda ruse.
On May the 6th, 1947, the government of Czechoslovakia decided to create the Terezin Memorial with the aim of preserving and conserving the site as it was during the Nazi occupation. The site has in fact been preserved in such a way so as to create an enduring memory and a warning for future generations.
So there are two museums in the old garrison town. The one museum is in what used to be the boys' barracks, which, by the way, used to be a school in the garrison town beforehand.
The children were kept in separate dormitories, and each dormitory had an adult prisoner who looked after the children. The adult artists who had been sent to Terezin, there was actually an artist studio built for them by the Nazis, which again sounds peculiar, but the artists had very strict rules about what they could produce and create. Some were used as draftsmen, others were involved in painting propaganda art, but those adult artists actually did draw what they saw as an act of defiance and hid. Some were discovered, some were tortured terribly. So you've got that story already, art becoming a way of recording what was actually happening. But not only did the adult artists do that, they also in some instances smuggled art materials to the dormitories where the youngsters were, and some of the children were then given art lessons actually. There was a whole curriculum developed that was not supposed to be happening, obviously, but the children were encouraged to draw as a way of allowing them a safe space to express themselves creatively, to give some sense of normality to these children who'd been deeply traumatized by what had happened.
We had a wonderful teacher. We had many, but this one was my favorite. Her name was Friederike Brandeis, and she could have been really the best artist of 20th century. She didn't have her own children, so she devoted really all her life and time for children. And she really opened our mind to work such a way that it helped us probably in many ways.
And so if one actually looks at the drawings that survive, you can really hear the voices of the children speaking very loudly. And so art for both young people and old was a vehicle not just of expression but actually of survival. It gave children a sense that things could improve, the world would go back to normal again.
When Friedel took us to the window of the children's home, and on a spring day she would say, "Kids, look out. There is a beautiful spring day. Terezinstadt is surrounded by mountains. Above those mountains is sun. But what is important is behind those mountains. Behind those mountains is hope for you. Maybe you will survive." Here I am. I survive, but I can't forget my friends. I think they are in my heart till I die.
The boys' barracks was a very active, vibrant place, and had some remarkable children that went through that. They organized their own system of government and administration. They also organized this magazine, this famous magazine called Vedem. There was a lot of creativity there and so on. And so it was an obvious place to create a museum.
Within the first year of it being established, so many people were dying that the Nazis had to build a special crematorium, which we know had the capacity for burning over 200 bodies a day, which gives you some idea of how many people were dying of starvation and of the terrible conditions in the ghetto.
And much of the ash that was generated from those crematoria is now buried in special graves, but also the Nazis tried to destroy a lot of the evidence, so they threw a lot of the ashes into the river nearby, and alongside the river is a very moving memorial to those who just disappeared into the water.
We are now standing in a place which used to be a graveyard. Back there we see, I don't know exactly the number, but about 15 or more countries from which Jews were sent in transports to Terezin. And this is from all over Europe. And it's very sad because there's not much left, and if it's left, so we know what happened to them in the end. Most of them died, killed by the Nazis.
וסחזנו עינינו בשובך לציון ברחמים. The synagogue was discovered only about 10 years ago, this little prayer room. The Nazis did not like people to pray, so there were few places where people prayed, but this is the one which was discovered. It was all these years in some house of after the war, in a house of the people who lived here. And when it was discovered, it was a big thing because it took some time to find exactly what is written on the walls and to try to renovate them. But here, this rabbi, who I would call him, he was Orthodox, modern Orthodox in the terms of today. And he made this prayer book and invested a lot, and he did all this by himself. And what he did, he wrote on the walls prayers which are said by the public, but we didn't find them in any other synagogues, because he chose ותחזינה עינינו, and he chose אנא שוב מחרונך ורחם סגולה אשר בחרת. Please come back, God, from your wrath and have pity on the people, on the elected people which you chose. In this synagogue, people used to come and pray. Here was the direction of the Jerusalem, and even within this time of the troubles which we were here and people were dwindling and dwindling, they were praying to God. אם אשכחך ירושלים, תשכח ימיני. If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget itself.
Initiated by the Cape Town Holocaust Center, the Brundibar project draws its inspiration from the children's opera Brundibar, which was performed in the Terezin ghetto. It illustrates how art can be used as a tool for defiance and survival, and give one hope to live in the direst of circumstances.
Every time the children performed and the musicians played and the opera ended with the defeat of the bully Brundibar, both audience and performers were basically saying, Hitler too will be defeated. And survivors who remember it talk about, first of all, their amazement. They don't understand why the Nazis allowed them to perform it, only that they think that the Nazis thought, well, they're going to be murdered anyway, who cares? But that the performance and the rehearsals they talk about them being bright sparks of hope in darkness.
We were a lot of children in the camp. So the Germans didn't know what to do with us really. So they decided that they will let us sing, they will let us play. And when we had little piece of paper and pencil to write those wonderful poems, and when they said that we don't have to have the Jewish star when we were singing Brundibar, we felt free. We were on stage and we forgot where we were. We were singing, we were dancing, and this was our life. Hope that we will survive. From the 15,000 children that we were in Terezinstadt, we were left back only 100.
The opera itself is phenomenal in itself. First of all, it's musically a beautiful piece of music. It's written specially for children, and it was smuggled into the Terezin ghetto, and there it was performed 55 times. And for years, it was never performed again. And then in the 70s, it was rediscovered, and now it's performed all over the world. But this is the first time that it's performed in Africa, first time in South Africa. So it's history in the making in itself. The cast was collected from all over the peninsula. There were open auditions, and kids from all kinds of backgrounds, all communities in the peninsula are represented in the cast. So it was a bringing together, and also of age groups, kids that came with completely different life experiences, and they've been focused on this project, learned to know one another, learned to understand the themes together, and in fact have produced, as you will see, an extraordinary production.
Right and justice will uphold. Dictator, he'll be defeated. United.
An important aspect of the whole Brundibar project was to use this incredible exhibition, both the historical exhibition and the art exhibition, to engage with schools. So we set up workshops which have been running the whole week, and where we have an average of about 160 kids a day. They come from different schools from all over the peninsula, and they come here for a program which engages them in art, in history, in writing, and performance.
Good, now you gotta hold us, I warned you. Good, so what are we seeing now?
I've been facilitating the drama workshops for the school kids who've come to engage with the Brundibar program. What I've been trying to do is to get them to really pick out the relevant themes that come out of Brundibar. Things like, facing up, doing the right thing in the face of wrongdoing, not just being a bystander, really speaking up when you see something wrong, facing bad injustices head on. So I try to pull out some of those themes and get the kids to explore how that relates to their own lives. And so far the response has been really interesting. What I love about drama is that they really have an opportunity to draw on their own experiences, and we do it through the medium of fun, so there's actually a lot of laughing and a lot of playing, but while it's happening as well, you can see they're thinking about things, new concepts are coming up, and they just throw their hearts into it. It's really beautiful to see.
And what you're doing is using words to express your gratitude for those people in your lives who are the rest.
I've based my workshops on the themes in the Brundibar play. And I've used the theme of bullying, the perpetrator and the victim, the bystanders and the rescuers. And I've used the bullying theme to allow the children to express their experiences as victims of bullies in life, and I've got amazing paragraphs back from them, how they've experienced being a bully. And then I've asked them all to write a letter to the people in their lives who are the rescuers, the support. So I've likened the supporters to the bird, the cat and the dog in the Burundi Bar story, and gathering around the children to support and try to concentrate on the positive aspect of garnering support in life when you feel like a victim, and expressing that gratitude to the people in your life who are those supporters and rescuers through the written word.
I know the problems which are stressing citizens of this country, and it's very sympathetic, the fight and effort of the South African people to go over the apartheid and to liberate themselves from the arrests and oppressions which happened in the past, but still alive in the minds of the people. And I think the example of Burundi Bar and all the history of the Jewish ghetto and Holocaust is extremely important just for this country.
I feel it's very relevant to South Africa. It resonates, the theme resonates with what happened here and also what is happening here. We've got xenophobia, it's based on exactly the same principles. Difference, which seems to breed fear and then hate, and this grows into the most horrific evil inside human beings, and we don't seem to learn the lessons. It's terribly tragic, and if we're aware of it, more of us are aware of it, obviously, and understand it better, it'll be handled better. I just wish we could clone this project, which has been superbly successful, and I wish we could just multiply it by 1 million and send the message out there, because we've got so much to learn.
And then for us, what's been really amazing is when we've been doing these workshops with the different facilitators, is that we've seen children come here who are particularly reserved, shy, they haven't really done this type of interaction before, and yet through these art forms, they've actually been able to express themselves. Some of the letters that have been written are just so moving and heartbreaking, some of them, and I think possibly the first time that they've actually expressed things that have happened to them and how they feel about those experiences and about the people who are involved in them, either on the bad side or the good side.
And most of the children that we've had up until now have come from communities that have been torn apart through violence, drugs, gangster stuff. So I think for the young people to really being able to find their voice, be it through art, be it through drama, be it through movement, has been extraordinary. This empowering, which we had in our wildest dreams hoped for, and it's been happening. This is truly the most extraordinary event. And just the fact that they're having a taste and being able to see what is possible in a really positive, creative way, to push back against the negative forces of prejudice, and that is just for us has been worth every second of sweat, and there has been sweat in organising this, but it's just the most extraordinary thing.
Well, that's our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining us, and please do tune in again same time next week. And remember, we'd love to hear from you, so please find us on Facebook at Spirit Sister Productions Network. As always, from me, Nikki, and the team, Shalom, and have a safe and peaceful week.